Welcome back. Rowan Dean coming up. Let's bring in our panel. We do it each Friday. Small business women, Australia CEO Amanda Rose and Sky News contributor, the great Joe Hildebrand. Great to see you both. Can you believe it, Amanda? Let's start with you. 5 years ago next Wednesday, and I couldn't believe it when I tracked this down today, 5 years since COVID lockdown number 1 in Melbourne. That lasted 43 days and was the first of 6 lockdowns. I mean, horrible things in your life, yes, you just shut them out, don't you?
Well, I know the government wants us to, because they want us to shut up and not ask for information and not find out what really happened. And people are still suffering from that. And that, I find it quite insulting that a lot of governments, not just Victoria, a lot of them just say, oh, look, let's move forward, let's get on with it. It's kind of like when someone cheats and said, oh, let's save the relationship, let's just move forward and forget it happened. No, people are suffering. Small businesses shut down as a result of those shutdowns, and they haven't built themselves back. And we've got families, everyone is suffering from this. And it really irritates me that government is quite arrogant by not sharing information when they're supposed to be sharing information. They're not being transparent about it all, because the reality is they were told, here's a global playbook, shut down everything. They did it, and they don't want everyone to know that they didn't even have a say in this. They were just following orders.
Amanda's right, Joe. I mean, the Victorian Libs are hunting down freedom of information. They want the documents about who told who to do what and why the advice was carried out the way it was. They've been fighting Labor, so it was Daniel Andrews and now Cinder Allen, for 2 years to deny those documents being released.
Yeah, look, we know now that, in fact, all this so-called expert advice that may or may not have actually existed was completely and utterly wrong, that politicians were making political decisions based on what was popular. They were pandering to fear in the community instead of allaying it. They were basically fueling it and then saying, look, I'm the great protector who can keep you safe from this terrible thing that's coming in. There are so many things that we know now that a lot of us were saying back then, but were shouted down and were accused of being reckless or, anti, that we were trying to kill grandma. We know that school closures should never, ever, ever have happened. There was never any evidence for them. There was never any reason to do it. And we know that kids now are still bearing the mental scars of those lockdowns and those school closures, that we are seeing a rise in mental health problems. And you'll see more reports on this over the weekend. We know that 3,000 people in the school system, kids, students, disappeared in New South Wales after the first lockdown alone. How many more? We just didn't know until News Corp did an incredible series where we found out that 80,000 kids, 80,000 children disappeared out of the school system, never to be seen again.
Yeah,
now, these are invisible ghost children who are basically martyrs to the cause of, be it Daniel Andrews or others who decide to go through with this sort of tough guy kind of image at the expense of what the science was actually. So no wonder no one wants to actually look at what went wrong and saying, are we prepared to do it again? And again, you talk about the World Health Organization. They said, don't lock down. If you're locked down, you're crushing lives, you're destroying people. You can only lock down for an incredibly short amount of time right at the beginning of a pandemic until you can put systems in place. But of course, as soon as everyone saw, the polling, the focus groups, we know they were commissioning the data. We know they were commissioning the research, saying what's popular, what messaging do people respond well to? Oh, they like it hard? Fine, we'll give it to them hard. And they did, and they broke a generation.
Amanda, why do you think we were so compliant?
Because we have weak leaders in this country, that's why, right? No one can actually stand up and do the right thing. Everyone's too scared of being voted out or, rejected by the globalists who might give them a job opportunity if they follow the rules of what they're supposed to be doing. I feel like no one's got any heart, any empathy, any compassion, any soul or any spine, and that's what we're left with. And now it's really highlighted what we went through, and the people don't care, because how can you be a politician right now and not constantly be pushing for this? I know Malcolm Roberts and Rennick pushed for this. How can you not be pushing to find out the truth of what actually happened? Because it is there and it will come out.
Well, the reason we need to find it out is so we don't make the same mistakes again. Let's talk supermarkets. We all use them. Amanda, you're representing small business. We've got this ACCC report that's taken years to do. Found Coles and Woolies are some of the most profitable supermarkets in the world. Gee, tell us something we didn't know. The regulator recommended retailers be forced to publish their prices online, but says there's nothing really that can be done to crack down on their market dominance. I mean, this has just been a waste of time, hasn't it, Amanda?
Well, it is. And the reality is nothing is going to happen, right? So in lockdown, small businesses had to close down their business, but the supermarkets could stay open. And you need to look at the shareholders. The main shareholders of Woolies and of Coles is your State Street, your Vanguard, your BlackRock. They're institutional investors. So governments aren't going to say, oh, we need to make sure the shareholders don't make much money, or we need to make sure there's some regulation in place so they don't squeeze the farmers and the small business and the suppliers dry for their profit margin, which is exactly what they're doing. They do not care about the people, and people need to remember that. They're not there for you, they're there for the shareholders. And they're institutional shareholders, a majority are overseas, and that's who they listen to, and that's who they're going to follow. So our governments, both sides, aren't going to do a single thing. They might throw a few, bits of promises saying, oh, we'll do some fines, or we might put some regulations in place. That is not going to happen at all. What they should be doing is propping up small business more than they're propping up the big business.
Well said. I mean, I'm a big fan of National Senator Bridget McKenzie. She didn't leave anything on the ground when she was asked about what she thought about the inquiry. Have a look.
They can't build a house, and yet somehow they're going to stop Coles and Woolies from gaming the planning system. But I didn't hear the word penalties. I didn't hear any tough measures that are actually going to put a very strong incentive for our supermarkets to behave better.
Joe, it's just going to be more of the same, isn't it?
Yeah, look, obviously, Coles and Woolies are a huge duopoly. They are very, very hard to take on. I thought that one of the ways in which the government could have achieved some really good results during the cost of living crisis as inflation was escalating was to sit down with Coles and Woolies and say, right, let's have a prices accord. You actually benefited enormously from the pandemic and the lockdowns, which are now causing everyone else to suffer. How about you suppress price increases, absorb some of the price increases, and sit down with the government, sit down with the union, say, all right, we might have some wage restraint, and you could actually build a much better relationship between Coles and Woolies and the community. Their real Achilles heel, if you like, is not what the big stick that the government can use to regulate them, but that these supermarkets pride themselves on being Australian icons, on having good brand affiliation with punters, that punters see them in a positive light. And if you suddenly say, if customers start to see these supermarkets as pariahs instead of Australian institutions, you can find that all the money in the world and all the profits in the world very quickly don't mean very much. So I think sunlight is the best disinfectant. They could have been better corporate citizens. The government could have sat down with them and said, right, we are going to make you or ask you to exercise some restraint, absorb some cost increases, and a good, a nice, the Lord's goodwill will be your reward. But that seems to be
They're definitely going to face the Lord. I'm telling you right now.
Hey, Amanda, Joe's sounding like Bob Hawke and Paul Keating. That's the last time I heard the words. A wages accord and a prices accord. It's been a long time, my friend, been a long time. They're never going to buy that, Amanda, are they? The government's not going to force the supermarkets to say, OK, we're not going to increase prices. I mean, seriously.
No, they're not. But if they can actually incentivise better competition and, prop up the small and medium enterprises and encourage that and put in mechanisms in place for that, that would be great. The thing is, we have governments that are friends with the elite. They rub shoulders with big business. And so they're very reluctant to actually do anything of value to restrict them. And that's our problem. So if we see governments not support the community the way we need to vote them out.
Exactly. Now, we all love a list. The Australian newspaper today put out its rich list. Amanda, I tell you what stood out for me, and I should know a little bit about this. Divorce can be very expensive. Twiggy Forrest is now less wealthy than his ex-wife, Nicola.
Oh, I'll tell you right now, that was one of the best things I have read in a while. That is fantastic. And you think, what I would like to point out here is that we assume that Nicola got divorced, got the money, oh, look, she's got more money now. I'm telling you, he wouldn't be as successful as he was without her. That woman is phenomenal. And she helped him, supported him, and she's probably the brains behind most of the stuff that he actually did. And now she's on her own. I actually would like to see her take off and thrive. So a woman with money is what we need in this society. And I think she's a wonderful role model for women everywhere, that you don't have to be with a guy to succeed. And if you take some money in a divorce, good on you.